Welcome to Discovering Academia. We are two college students who travel the world recording podcasts with academics about their research, passions, and current events. We hope that in doing so, our casual conversations can help promote curiosity and make academia more accessible. Now for the episode. Welcome back to our second ever boys only episode of Discovering Academia. It's been about a year since we launched, and we wanted to do a short video podcast to reintroduce you guys to what we're trying to do here. We have a little bit more practice under our belts now, so we can maybe explain our ideas a little bit better, and also give you an update on what we've done over the last year. So we're really trying to create very casual conversations with academics about their research, their passions, what's going on in the world. And our biggest goal here is just to make people more curious, to introduce them to new ideas, and hopefully make them want to get involved in academia and make the barrier to entry a little bit easier, and overall just make the space very accessible.
Yeah. And like with that goal, part of what we're trying to do is a lot of travel. We think that while talking to academics of different disciplines is very useful and very insightful, there's only so much diversity of thought that you're going to get at a given institution in a given region. So with that, we're trying to travel all over the world, go to all 7 continents, and really get a diversity of cultural backgrounds that go into academia. And luckily, that's something we've been able to do recently in the past year. We both traveled abroad, and I'll let Brent explain that first.
Yeah. So all of our podcasts have been in person. So last summer, I studied at the London School of Economics. We were able to get a couple of recordings done there. And then Keller met up with me, and we then proceeded to travel a bit around Europe. We went to Utrecht University, and after that, then we went to France, where we interviewed a professor from UC Berkeley, but who lives in France and runs that program out there. And then wrapped up the last interview in Europe in the University of Geneva up in Switzerland. And it was just a ton of fun to travel around, get to see different parts of the world, get to hear different perspectives. You get to see a little bit of how things are similar to the US, but also like how things are kind of different. And I think the France episode with the Berkeley professor was really amazing because it was all about French history. And then after the episode, we went and traveled to some of the sites that we just talked about too.
Like that same day.
Literally the same day. So it was really special to be able to not only talk about it, but then go see it. And then right after that, we had like 10 days in between my last class at London and starting classes at the National University of Singapore. I'll let Keller explain that part.
Yeah, so a little background on like why we chose Singapore. We're both interested in business, and like Singapore is kind of a really great hub for that. And luckily, like through UC Davis, they make it very easy to study abroad, and they have these great partnerships with all kinds of universities, like the National University there. So we ended up going to Singapore, and it was kind of the perfect location for us. Like one, because we had some connections there that made it really easy, but also location wise, it's kind of the easiest place to be in Asia to travel around.
Especially like Southeast Asia.
Yeah. So like while we were there, to get around to other countries was relatively cheap. And we were able to go to 8 countries?
Yeah. Went down to Indonesia twice, went to Malaysia a couple times, like once. We went to Vietnam, Thailand. I think that's it for like that region.
Yeah, but we were able to get 11 interviews at the National University there. It was just really cool to see like how different they've set up their university compared to Pierre and Davis. Like it's all more spread out and like kind of separated from each discipline.
Even the campus, like specifically, was like very
location-wise, it would take a 10-minute bus to go from the humanities area, which is where we ended up taking a lot of our classes, to go to like an engineering area. And it was just really like interesting to see the different like academic culture there, because we have, I think, a lot of parts of it here where students are really focused on just doing their academics and maybe not feeling as like free to explore different creative outlets. And I think we both felt like there, it was that like to the max. Like you have students that are really pretty stressed out about what they're doing, and not to like say that in like a negative light, but I think that kind of just motivated us more towards like our mission here of trying to promote that curiosity. Is we felt like a lot of students seemed boxed in what they were studying. So like, that really just lit a fire.
A great example is just in the library every day. You go in, kids are sleeping because they've been studying for so long. And if you go out on the weekends to see the nightlife in Singapore, it's only 30-year-olds up.
Or high schoolers.
or high schoolers, yeah. So it's very much that college age to like early career. They're so focused on getting secure, getting the good job, getting like the most they can get out of that. And you really notice that it's a huge dichotomy versus, I think, America and a lot of universities here. You see a pretty healthy like party culture and just different focuses for college, because some people here are very focused on career academics, and then others take college as an opportunity to socialize. And there's a lot of people also very much in the middle. So that was a really interesting dynamic shift between those.
Yeah. And like while we were traveling, a lot of the nature of our travel was pretty touch and go, like weekend trips. So we didn't have a ton of opportunities to do podcasts in every country we went to, which we might have hoped to have done. But luckily we were able to do a really cool interview in Indonesia, where we were able to we had a whole class learning about like art beyond the frames. It was all performance art and musical art. And we were able to learn a traditional art performance. And we talked about that in another episode, but being able to like go and talk to the woman that creates this art in the actual facility where the art is made and performed, sitting down on the floor with her son in the background, that was just like a really beautiful moment for us, I think, of we had this idea of doing this internationally and getting other cultures like exposed. And that was, I think, our first example, which we got more of later, which we'll talk about. But that was our first like kind of proof of concept that, okay, this idea can work outside of a traditional, professor's classroom or lecture hall.
Yeah. And then once we wrapped up in Singapore, we went to Hong Kong for 3 days. Did 3 interviews at the Hong Kong University, and then we went into mainland China for roughly 12 days from there, and were able to record a couple of episodes out there. A really, really special one was when we went to Guilin, and there's a professor working. He has he sits at the Guilin Tourism University, but his project is all outside at this tiny farming village, maybe 100 people max. And it's called like Daoshan. And what they've done there is they've completely revitalized the culture and the farming capabilities to be all organic, very sustainable. And they reinvested in the school there. And the school is maybe like a 20 by 20 foot classroom with every age in there, because it's one school that facilitate like education for the whole community there. And it was just super cool because they're very focused on the process of growing their rice and how it's not just a means of making money, but also very spiritual. And that was really fun to see. That podcast too was done fully in Mandarin.
We also we didn't even know that it was going to be like, we went into it not knowing if we're going to have a translator or anything. So we're on the drive.
Yeah, the night before like midnight.
Translating everything. We're like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, the night before at midnight, the professor tells us, this is the location. Just meet us there. Someone will pick you up. We arrive and we're just standing in this village. These little kids are just looking at us confused and then a guy pulls up on a scooter, is like, hop on, we're going to the guy's house. And the whole village is being like under reconstruction. So we just like pull up, sit in like these tiny little stools, and we pull up our questions that are retranslated from English to Mandarin, and he reads the questions, gives his response, and we had to just sit there like so that was
a lot of nodding.
Yeah, super fun though. Amazing people all throughout China, and just we were welcomed with open arms. After that, we went to Chengdu, recorded with some expats out there. And then we'll take.
Yeah, so for that, we got really lucky because we reached out to the Global Learning Hub, another Davis plug. We told them what we were trying to do here or there in China, and they gave us a list of any faculty or really members of the university that had affiliations in China. And luckily, Li Wenchun, our good friend now, was able to help connect us to all these expats. And that was really cool because, again, in terms of like getting different perspectives, we got to hear from people about like why they decided to move to China. And like a lot of them were American. I think both of them were American expats that decided to live in China to pursue their area of study. And just hearing like kind of their reasoning and also their passion for a culture that is so different from theirs. And that passion really stems from like their actual curiosity in that topic, was really fun. And they were super helpful in connecting us down the line. Like towards the end of the trip, we went to Shanghai. We got a really cool tour, which we can talk about later. But yeah, I think Sichuan was really, or Chengdu was cool because like one, it's Sichuan province, and like as Americans, like that's kind of a lot of what we know about China is like
Especially from the food. Yeah.
And so getting to do that, trying hot pot, which I had some back end problems with. But that was just a ton of fun. And then from there we went to Xi'an. I was kind of out for the count for most of that. Got hit with something, but it was really cool to see there. And we saw it too in Chengdu, but especially in Xi'an, there's a lot of young people that are wearing like traditional Chinese outfits, like ancient Chinese outfits, and that is like what is in fashion now. And like I can't even imagine what that would look like in the US, like wearing wigs or something. But it was really cool because when we were planning our China trip, we had some people we met in Singapore who were from China, and they were telling us like, oh, like, you know, you might see this. We like kind of had a vague idea of what that would look like. But then we went out in the town, and it was like, I would say a significant percentage of the people that are around the young adult age were wearing that traditional outfit. And even like, there was like influencers filming an advertisement for KFC, which we got on. But they were wearing the whole traditional fit. And so that was just really cool.
Yeah. And to give a little bit of context, Xi'an used to be the former capital. It's where the Terracotta Warriors are. So I think because of that like deep history in like the development of China, it's like a huge spot for it. I was able to walk around and like tour a bit more of the city than Keller was able to. We were able to get a recording done over there too. Directly after that recording, I then got sick. So Xi'an was definitely a little bit of like the rougher part of the travel, but not because of the city, just because of the health. And then we wrapped up in Shanghai. We weren't able to get any recordings done there, but we got a tour of the botanical gardens, which were, I think it's the most popular, most well-known botanical garden in all of China. And we have content filmed there that we'll touch on more later that we're going to need help being able to put out into the world. And I think with China as a whole, the thing that was really eye-opening was we recorded a lot with expats out in mainland because those were the ones willing to talk to us in a recorded setting. A lot of other professors were willing to sit down and talk to us, and they're curious about what we have to say and our questions, but they weren't willing to be recorded. So that was a very interesting dynamic shift there as well. But yeah, kind of like moving a bit more into the future here. We're just a year in. Our goal is to be putting out podcasts every week, continue to record with not only UC Davis professors, but go around to Stanford, UCSF, Berkeley, Sac State, Reno, like wherever we can go to. And then we're also pursuing getting nonprofit status, and I'll let Keller break that down a bit more.
Yeah, so what that's looking like, kind of like in the short term, like we don't need to go too much into the weeds on that, but we're going to be setting up in the next, hopefully, few weeks here as a nonprofit project through a fiscal sponsorship with an actual nonprofit. And so what that means in like the simplest terms is pretty much we're able to start getting funding in as a nonprofit without being an entity ourselves, because that process is both long and expensive, and we have neither time nor money. But the main motivation for that is one, like we say that our mission is to make this content more accessible. And as things currently stand with our media and our abilities to run that media, we're really not getting the content out to as many people or the people we need to get it out to. And so when we get funding in, it'll make it a lot easier for us to, one, hire people on, which is a really big goal of ours, because we're both very passionate about this and we both see the vision very clearly. But we think that getting someone on the team and having them do their own part and also see the vision and kind of growing with us will really kind of solidify and validate what we're doing here. And then the other aspect with getting the funding is it'll allow us to travel. So like right now, obviously we're at Davis and we're hoping it'll be pretty easy to go to Stanford and Cal. And that's all really good because those are very good schools. But part of the accessibility part of this is not only getting accessibility to students who might not have access to this, but also universities that might not typically get the same limelight as some of these major institutions, and getting funding in to do that like domestically before we even travel is something that we think would be really cool. And we just think setting up as a nonprofit allows the mission to be carried forward more thoroughly because it kind of makes it so that the content, once we're set up, it's no longer ours, it is the entities. And that kind of just pushes us to grow it as much as we can before we graduate, because it becomes a lot more of a kind of sink or swim environment of, if we don't grow it in that time, then it just sits in no one's possession. But if we can grow it and build a community around it and have people that are really feeding off of it, then we've really done something with our time here.
Yeah. And part of the educational resource we're trying to build is just like the podcasts are part of it. This all started because we felt a disconnect between research being performed on campus. We're at a top research university. The school gets over $1 billion in funding every year to perform research. And you go around, ask almost any underclassman, and what is your professor research? Not what do they teach you, but what do they research? And I doubt almost anyone can answer that question. And we're hoping to use the podcast, especially for professors to be able to share what they research, where that field is going, how students can get involved. And these professors are insanely busy. It's something we've learned just by scheduling with them. And they don't have time to sit down with each student who might be interested in their work. So the goal there is to use the podcast. Like, this will be a great introduction to not only the topic, but what this professor specifically researches. And from there, those who are really interested could find a way to get involved. Almost every professor has their email listed on their website. Our goal is to reduce the barriers to entry, to make it super easy for kids to reach out. We're going to be putting templates up on our website of how we do it, how we run this podcast, how to reach out to professors, just the general strategy there. We're hoping too that if we get funding, we can host live events with professors where it might be a live podcast that opens up for questions afterwards, or it could be a panel of professors that have done really, really well on our platform. And then people want to ask more questions, or the field's evolving quickly. So, and we're also incredibly open to suggestions. We want to know who we should talk to, where we should go, what ideas we should explore. And that's a huge part of why we want to expand the team, because we're kind of reaching our capacity now. Like, we're both double majors. We're both trying to do this. We're trying to work. And I think we both have a passion for overloading ourselves. And that could lead to a overload paralysis at times, where there's so many things we can do or we want to do that we get stuck always thinking about them and not just doing them. So if we're able to bring on someone to help with social media, to edit the videos, we have hours of footage from our travels across Europe and Asia, and we don't have the time, skills, ability, know-how, to just get that out there. And we really believe in that there's a really beautiful story to be told with what we've done. And it's not just for us, it's to inspire others to travel. Because, like, Keller, you might expand on the fact that you got scholarships to travel. It's like, it's not just like you have the money to go. It's like there's resources available to all types of students to facilitate some of that?
Yeah, like, so I've traveled like twice, I guess, independently while I've been in school, and both times, one was when I went to Nepal for an independent research program that was funded by the Gilman Scholars Program from, UC Davis was able to help facilitate that. And then the Freeman Asia Scholarship, again, UC Davis was able to help facilitate that. And like, I wouldn't have been able to afford going, especially in Singapore, because that is not a cheap country.
The most expensive in the world.
And also with Davis, like with our agreements, obviously not every school is going to have this, but we paid our regular in-state tuition while we were in Singapore. And that was a huge savings because Singapore is really expensive. And I would not have been able to do any of that travel at the scale that we did it if it wasn't for those scholarships. And that's like another thing with the resources is like, we're hoping to like also make it clear of like where you can get scholarships, how to apply, how to tell your story in getting these scholarships. Because the reality is for most students, especially students that are low income, there's a lot of foundations that do want to support you doing this kind of travel. But a lot of students don't know about it and they don't even know really how to begin. But that's something like I really wouldn't have been able to do it in the way that I did without that. And I think if all students knew about it and knew how easy it is to just put together an essay, and also how helpful it is to put together an essay like that, because a lot of students do their college essays and they're like, okay, that's my storyline. And then they kind of forget about it. But also like for us, we want to go to graduate school. And so like for me, like writing these scholarship essays and trying to like really keep thinking, okay, what is the story I'm trying to tell? How is going to travel to Nepal? How is doing this international travel? How is that actually helping me in who I want to be in my career? That is super helpful to me. But a lot of students, for whatever reason, they kind of do their essays once and they forget about that through line. And when you are always trying to think about it, it makes it a lot easier to also just like on the fly, like elevator pitch yourself. If you run into a professor or run into someone you like might want to be connected with, when you're always thinking about that storyline, it makes it really easy to just give it out on the fly. And I think there's a lot of benefit to that in terms of like seizing a given opportunity. And that's kind of what we're about here.
Yeah. And just kind of wrapping this up, it's professors want to help. These foundations want to help. I just think the resources aren't readily displayed in the manner that they could be. And we're hoping to kind of be that bridge between some of the institutions and the students. So please, if you think of a way we can be better, if you want to join the team, if you have any insight for us, please reach out. We have an email at podcast@discoveringacademia.com. Our social medias are very much tied to the actual Instagram and all of those. We're pretty accessible. But we can't do this alone. I think we're really starting to notice that right now. And we want to build this team out because that's the only way we're going to grow and become better than we are now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.